Hello and welcome to Neverwinter Night's Hordes of the Underdark, and this will be part 2. We spent the previous episode setting up this expansion.
Aye.
So we are going to head down into the dungeon itself, into Under Mountain, I think it's called. And the first thing we bump into is a goblin.
You're not a fairy. No,
He just wants to get out of there.
for the ogre.
He's tired of all the fighting that's happening in this place, and he just wants to be away from it all. And I can't help but feel that this is a reference to a scenario that takes place in the Shadows of Underdark. I haven't completed that chapter, so I don't know the outcome of it. Well, sort of, I do, but I don't. But early on in that game, there's a scene where a paladin, a young female paladin, is complaining about the fact that she was sent out to aid a goblin child, and she's lectured. And if you play a paladin yourself, of course, you should lecture her for not realizing that paladins are compassionate as well as righteous. So I can't help but feel that this scene was a nod back to that. Maybe it's just me imagining things. But anyway, we send him upstairs and hope that our friend upstairs is not going to say, "Oh, goblin, kill!" We don't get fine before we bump into our first casualty. Shaman, our bard NPC henchman thing, we can, of course, resurrect. Because we were given a lot of resurrection just in case we bumped into some unfortunate soul. It was basically a given, since we were given a chance to resurrect them. And apparently dying makes you lose your memory because you can't really remember what's been going on, but then it dawns on her what that stuff. And we can use this resurrection to have her join us as a henchman. But because, of course, I was playing through the original campaign with this character without using a henchman, I will not be using a henchman for quite a while. There will be one I will be using, but it will take a significant amount of time before we get to that henchman. So until that time, I will be without a henchman, which is actually beneficial to me because then I don't have to explain why I will not run around with Deacon. I know he's a fan favorite, but personally, I am not a fan of Deacon. That thing we just passed, by the way, was one of 2 ways there is to reach the level 2, or the second level, I think it's called. And I will be utilizing both because it's experience. But this part of the dungeon, it contains 3 sections: the central bit, the south bit, and the north bit. And all 3 sections are littered with enemies and secret doors. And of course, secret doors have to be discovered. This is a reload because that chest was a teleport. And then we bump into this little room. I suddenly cut myself off. I'm sorry, but this is somewhat important. Because we meet an enemy type we have dealt with quite a few times in the original campaign. A dragon. A blue dragon. An old blue dragon. And the reload was because I screwed up and got mauled by a blue dragon. Because of course a dragon is a dragon. You cannot ignore their strength. They are quite powerful. But anyway, we are going to be bashing the blue dragon, and because of course you are watching this is a successful attempt even against the blue dragon, because the power of reload is stronger than the power of dragon. It was I could have managed. I just underestimated that I needed to heal, and then the dragon crit me, and then I was regretting not healing. That was the reason for the reload. We'll manage. The dragon will drop some extremely epic loot, sort of. Actually, no, it won't. But of course, any encounter of this type is valuable experience, and experience values are increased quite heavily compared to the original campaign. The minimum experience you can get now is 62 experience instead of 4 in the original campaign, so that is a nice little touch. Obviously, you also need significantly more experience in order to level, but I mean, by and large, it feels more rewarding to fight even insignificant individuals. Something to be said for this level is there's an awful lot of loot to be had. And of course, because we lost our equipment in the previous episode, we do not have the bonus strength from the belt of giant strength. So our ability to pick up stuff and carry stuff is quite limited. There will be a handful of runs going back and vending stuff, and technically I don't need to, because of course we still have the money we had from the original campaign, which was quite a significant amount, even if we spent some money buying equipment. But I will showcase a few times that I'm running back, just a few seconds, and not waste anyone's time running back to the start, rendering stuff, and coming back down again. In this bit we bumped into some Drow, and of course, as you'll probably gather from the introduction video in the first part, the Drow is a predominant factor in this expansion. And we are just bumping into some random Drow that is located in this dungeon, because of course Halaster's dungeon is crawling with all sorts of monsters of different variety. And two types of them are actually fighting each other, which becomes relevant in a moment, but just running back, just quickly showcasing, running back to do inventory stuff, and then going to cut it relatively quickly. But there's another reason for that, and that is because, of course, we want to make sure that the goblins survive being sent up, which it did. And want to know what to do with the goblin, and we suggest that he gets him to work in the kitchen, and he's okay with that, and the goblin's okay with that, so everyone's okay with that. So it's a equitable solution. But it turns out that, of course, our friend Halaster, who designed and set up this dungeon, has gone missing, has disappeared. And because of that, the creatures of the dungeon are free to roam and do whatever they want to do, and of course it leaves a power vacuum. And two of the factions have decided to fight it out. A faction supporting a fairy and a faction supporting I think it's called Older Mage. And of course we will eventually have to deal with both of them. It's quite clearly indicated by the large fights that you bump into from time to time, where you have ogres beating on fairies, because, yeah, they like to feel brave doing things like that. More looting. These rods we pick up are used for the puzzle thing that's blocking the way down to level 2 that we bumped into previously, but lo and behold, we are going to bump into another NPC, another henchman. This time it's Dalen, the barbarian henchman, who apparently looked in the wrong mirror and got absolutely beaten to a pulp. This hall of mirrors have different mirrors, and you will see objects. And once you pick one object, the mirror disappears. But there's one specific mirror that will spawn a mirror image of yourself. And of course, I mean, we want to trigger that despite the fact that he's warning against it, because of course, I mean, a fight is experience. But There's a caveat to that, which I completely and utterly screw up. Just like with Shaman, we told him that we don't really see any point to having him around, so we just send him back. Don't want any followers. Followers are soaking experience. Experience is valuable. Just, triggering all the traps, because that's what I like to do. But then it's time to check the mirrors, and as you can see, we look at the mirror even, and there's only one item here, so it doesn't count. But you can pick one item, and then it disappears. The boo-boo I made is the fact that I triggered the mirror image. And of course, it is a mirror image of your own character. It's basically a mirror fight. Quite literally a mirror fight. I should probably have unequipped my equipment before that. I'm not entirely sure that would have made a difference, but of course, the monk has a solid armor class, and not necessarily the best to hit. So, hitting my own mirror image is surprisingly difficult, and if I did not speed this bit up, we would have been here for about, I think it was 4.5 minutes. Something like that. It's incredibly funny to see that basically only rolling 20 hits. That applies to both, of course, because it's a mirror fight. And for some bizarre reason, the mirror image has decided to equip a dagger, which means it hasn't got quite as many attacks and won't do a fraction of the damage, which is a nice little thing. I can't not appreciate that, but this fight is definitely going the distance. So, one thing that's been confirmed is that Hammerfist cannot hit himself. It is considered effortless, by the way, but as you can possibly see, it has the same bonuses and whatnot as Hammerfist himself has, because of course it is a mirror image. We're having a lot of fun. Talk about shadow boxing. Ha 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 ha. No? No. I agree. It wasn't very funny. No, it wasn't. A bit like watching this. It's just like, I hit you and you hit me. No, try again. I hit you, you hit me. Take 20. You hit me and I hit you. No. Okay. Well, eventually we will win, of course, because yeah, we do more damage, and the amount of dice rolls just being rolled is hilarious. It's actually quite funny how many times are being rolled without any hits taking place. But a whopping total of 62 experience, that was definitely not worth it, but I have beaten myself to a pulp, which is not something you necessarily want to tell people that you have been doing. But we get out of this Hall of Mirrors thing. Eventually. And then we bump into something a bit special. Just some random loot to pick up. So, there's a warning saying not to disturb kings. We have a handful of skeletons seated, and they're not going to do anything. But there is a certain individual you can meet, or you will meet. And unfortunately, I did not intend to, but I accidentally cut him a bit short. But look at that nice glowing red sword.
You there! Yes, you! Take me out of this.
Far be it from me to make a simple request and hope that an adventurer might do as they are asked for once. No? Fine. Let's start this out correctly, shall we? My name is Enseric the Grey. Or at least that was my name before my spirit was drawn into this blasted weapon. Yes, yes, chuckle away at my predicament. Go ahead. You see, I was once an adventurer just as you are, seeking my path.
This is an intelligent sword,
unknown
and it's an
ground.
intelligent sword because
When
it's
I
got
was
someone's
killed by this
soul in it.
sword, my
He tried to
soul
nick the
was
sword
sucked
attacked him,
inside,
and we got absorbed.
and here I have
He got
been
absorbed.
ever since.
His soul got absorbed into the sword, so he's now a permanent feature of the sword. This means that you can run around with a sword with a personality. Obviously, we are not using swords, so as a weapon, it's completely and utterly irrelevant for this character. But taking the sword is what provokes all these kings, whatever they are, to wake up. And of course, fighting mini-bosses means experience, and experience is good. So we end up picking up the sword. I will likely never speak to him again, because I forget. But for something like a fighter or paladin or similar, it's a fairly decent sword. But we looted the sword and everyone got annoyed, and now they want to fight. And thankfully, they are not particularly dangerous. I'm very sure that depends entirely on the character class you're playing, but of course when you're playing a monk which has a very high resistances to spells and that kind of stuff, yeah. It is not a formality, they can definitely whack you, but they yield a significant amount of experience, which means of course that we actually get enough experience to level up. After experiencing the last bits of Neverwinter Nights, suddenly getting this amount of experience almost feels a bit too generous, but I will happily take it. We are ultimately on the quest for leveling up and seeing just how powerful this character can actually become. I have completed this game and its expansion with a monk, but not a pure class monk. So I'm going to be experiencing myself just what it entails. The variety of his using was actually quite powerful as well, but it didn't obtain the full power of the monk, so it's going to be somewhat interesting to see what happens. Anyway, stuff to loot, more stuff that we can't carry, and yeah. Pick up everything, because of course we are hasted, so even though we aren't able to move properly, we'll still be able to move faster than without being hasted. That key unlocks the door, because the door's shut behind you once you start looting stuff, so it is important to get that. But let us do some leveling up. Level 18, which is the level on which we will get the feat toughness, which of course will give you 1 hit point per level retroactively, so you have to remember that in order to max the HP gains, which I will do, you have to add 18 to that number to get the proper number. And of course we get empty body, which is a nice little feat, which I will showcase once I've added it to the quick bar. It is likely a feat I will forget to use from time to time, but it basically twice per day, or per rest if you want, give your monk 50% concealment, which is a nice little payback for all the concealed enemies, because that is definitely something that will be a recurring theme in this expansion, is that everything that can cast spells will be concealed. Now we can join in on the fun and conceal ourselves. It's actually surprisingly powerful having 50% concealment twice per rest against very, very powerful melee fighters, which of course is our greatest threat. It is undeniably quite strong. But we've gone into the south section in order to reach one of the two factions which are fighting each other, the fairies. Yes, I'm going to be. It's trying very, very hard not to say something that can easily be picked up rude, but I mean, it's not my fault that someone decided that a certain something should be called a fairy. But we are going to deal with a fairy, let me put it that way. That should be quite neutral and only rude if people will want it to be. Obviously, in order to fight the fairy, we have to locate her first, and in order to do that, we have to punch our way through several different individuals of different kind, or different kinds, whatever, words, difficult. But before we get that far, there's this little puzzle which is not particularly difficult, but it is a recurring theme in this expansion, the same sort of setup. So I'm showcasing it now, how it pans out. We have 3 statues and 3 levers. We can shift the statues around and suddenly it sends a beam towards the door. And we can use the lever to lock the statue in position. And guess what? We have to do that with all 3 statues. From time to time, if they are not locked in position, they will be beset, and a skeleton will spawn, which will have an 8-second timer finger on it before it blows up. So we want to destroy the skeleton before that point and then be annoyed by the fact that the statues have been reset. But once you have all 3 pointed toward the door and locked in position, they will blow up the door. And we can now access a special treasure room. And it is definitely a recurring theme. That is something that is a puzzle type that will show up about a handful of times in this expansion. So by showcasing it now, I can skip through it later on. So more looting, more bashing, more punching, more looking for secret doors. There is one room in this section I will say right away that I miss out on, and that is because it can only be accessed through a secret door that for some reason the game decided my character could not discover. I've been running around with Lino, which of course is an elf, and elves have a natural bonus to finding secret doors and that kind of stuff. I would likely have found them, but I'm very, very insistent on not using the henchmen. These fairies wanted to wake up the guardians, which are some zombies. They are not particularly challenging, so we'll just beat them up. And then we'll beat up the fairies as well, of course. There was one we missed, it wasn't awakened by a fairy, so we will just awaken it ourselves and smack it about. I will get to a point where I stop picking up loot, by the way, because there's no point for this character to actually pick up a lot of the loot just for the single purpose of running back and wandering constantly. You should get enough gems and lighter objects which can be vended to keep you in good shape from a monetary point of view. So I can't remember how much money you need in this game. You likely need a good chunk, but of course, yeah, it is always something that can be sorted by other means. Another rod discovered. Another rod, but we already got a white one and we don't need more than one. The puzzle on the main level that has use of the different rods, you can put the rods in and then take them back out again, so they are reusable, so you don't need multiples of the same. So it is not worth filling up inventory space. A trap door. I wonder if that leads into the general area of the Fairy Queen. It will, but we have to punch our way through a room of yeah, attended bodyguards, I would assume. They don't seem to be doing an awful lot. At least they try. You have to give them 10 out of 10 for effort. What we are dealing with are quite a champion fighter, so to speak. Hand-to-hand combat, he's quite powerful. And of course, these poor things do not stand a chance. I had no idea whether I would need any of that fairy dust, but I decided to pick up a unit just in case. I would rather have it and not need it than need it and not have it. But time to go and face off against the Fairy Queen and whatever friends he may have available. Among them, a water elemental that will try to drown us, but fail flat. Now, this Fairy Queen, I mean, fairies are usually quite small, but apparently she was naughty towards Halaster, and he rewarded her by enlarging her and making that enlargement last for 100 years, just to mock her. Now, you could likely make a valid argument saying that, of course, because fairies usually are quite pretty individuals, for a human character, a male human character, having a almost human-sized fairy may not necessarily be a bad thing, but needs to get the head out of the gutter and all that stuff. She is very conscious about the fact that she's humongous compared to her fairy friends, and yeah, it's hard not to feel sorry for the poor thing who's still got, I think it is 46 years remaining of her penance before she can go back to being a fairy-sized fairy. Surprise, surprise, we win on this fight. And
enough, please. Allow what a pitiful end to all this. Tell me, what does it cost to retain the services of someone so powerful?
she tells us of her nemesis, which is an ogre mage, which, surprise, surprise, we are going to go and visit in the next part. Because, of course, the best way to deal with a power struggle is to get rid of both sources of the power struggle. Especially when it awards experience, but there's little reason to remove her permanently when she has acknowledged the fact that she is defeated, and letting her live is not going to have any meaningful dire consequences of any kind. So we will let her get away, and she will get away in a Superman-esque spectacular fashion, which of course looks significantly more impressive based on the fact that she is as large as she is. We are coming up to the end of this part, and I know it's a single part, but I have uploaded earlier today a video that will explain what I intend to do with this series going forward. To recap, the idea is to have this series run Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Ideally, 3 episodes per day. On that note, thanks for watching. Take care. See you next time. Bye bye for now.